Hello everyone, welcome to Vegan Business Talk. I'm Katrina Fox, your host, and I'm delighted to introduce you to our guest today, Sara Polon of Soupergirl, and that's spelled S-O-U-P-E-R, which is a fabulous name. I love it. And Sara is a former stand-up comedian turned soup maker. She founded Soupergirl in 2008 with her mother Marilyn, who's known as, wait for it, Super Mom. I love it. Based in Washington, D.C., Sara and Marilyn have been featured regularly on national television, including Shark Tank and NBC's Today Show. Last year, Soupergirl received a $2 million investment from Arborview Capital and Seth Goldman, who's the board member of Beyond Meat. More recently, the company has become plastic neutral through its partnership with Repurpose Global in a further step to fulfill Soupergirl's goal of saving the planet one bowl of soup at a time. Welcome to the show, Sara.
Thank you so much for having me, Katrina.
I'm so excited to hear about your story, and I've got to kick off with the first part of you're a former stand-up comedian. That's a pivot. Everybody's talking about 2020. We're all pivoting. That's a big pivot that you did. Tell us why. Why did you go into soup making?
It's funny. When I lived in New York, doing comedy, I obviously was not rolling in the dough. There were a lot of volunteer opportunities to do stand-up, shall we say. And so I kind of pieced together different jobs. And but when my parents would visit, my mom, she cooked soup, for the months leading up to the visit, and would put the soup in like single portion freezer bags. And then she'd just fill my freezer with soup, and I would just defrost them. And I literally have no idea what other people eat. So, because I consider soup the perfect food. It's, it's hearty. It's so easy. If someone else makes it for you, you just heat it up and eat it. And a well-made bowl of soup can be the perfect food if it's, it can have hydration and vegetables and plant-based protein and fiber, everything in just one bowl. So, I consider it quite literally the perfect food. And I've just been eating it now for like 30 years, it's just, and I learned everything about cooking from my mom, and she's a great soup maker. Also, when we started the business, we were really committed to cooking seasonally and sourcing sustainably farmed ingredients. And soup is a great way. It's like a great vehicle to showcase all of the beautiful ingredients in the Mid-Atlantic, the Chesapeake watershed area. We have wonderful seasons. This is not like LA where it's just one season the whole time. We have fall, winter, spring, and summer, and different produce that comes with each season. So you can cook, a soup you make with seasonal produce in January is very different than one in May, and that's very different in August. So It's really fun to experiment. And soup is also, you can experiment. Like, I don't understand baking. Baking's like chemistry, baking, if you get one ingredient wrong, it's like the cake doesn't rise, and wrong. Like soup, it's like, oh, let's add this, let's play with this. So it's creative and it's fun.
So, and I'm curious, that's good. Then what were there any skills that you've had in your previous career as a stand-up? And I totally I'm laughing when you said the volunteer opportunity, because I did some stand-up myself like many years ago, and I totally get it, and I did it as a character. I didn't even do it as me. I had a whole character and a wig and everything. Oh, so wow. It's fun. But like you say, it can be quite a hard slog until you kind of, make it kind of thing. But are there any skills from your career as a stand-up comedian that you have found helpful in running Soupergirl?
Yeah. It's all about the brand these days. To differentiate yourself online, you really have to dive into your brand. And look, the brand name Soupergirl, it's hopefully fun, and it gives people a chuckle right from the start at the, when you see the label. So the comedy, allowed me, and it continues to allow me to get really creative when it comes to brand building, and really finding that voice, because I am Soupergirl. It's not like, people start companies and we just kind of stumbled into this. We didn't quite know what we were doing, but we built this brand that is based on a person, me, and my mom is Super Mom. And so the brand is us. So we are able to produce content that's quite authentic because it's coming from us, Soupergirl. And so being a comedian has allowed me to really get creative with that content and what we're putting out there. And, you know, in 2021, I think like you, we're trying to just kind of throw the rule book out and just have fun. And it's working, hopefully.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about Shark Tank later, but I think your logo and your branding was praised by, I think it was Laurie on Shark Tank. Yes. So you obviously, got that going, which is brilliant. Let's go back to the beginning to start with, though. Tell us about some of the challenges, because you started, this was 13 years ago. So what were some of your initial challenges when you first started up the company, and how did you handle them?
Oh, my gosh. I mean, first of all, we launched in the middle of a global recession. 2008.
Oh, you did too. 28. Yeah.
Everyone thinks about this one, but 2008 was bad. And that's when I decided to quit my well-paying job. Not well-paid, but like I wasn't rolling in it, but I had a salary, you know, health insurance, and left that to start this business. And one of the challenges was that I had never owned my own business, so I didn't quite know what I was doing. But I would say the way I've overcome a lot of things that I've done in life, some of the best decisions I've ever made, I like to say, I don't fully think them through. Because if I do, you know, I don't know if I would have done them. So like, you know, starting this business, I kind of, I would sometimes 3:00 in the morning, sit up in bed and be like, oh my God, what am I doing? But, you know, during the day, you just keep doing, you just keep going. And so I think, honestly, I so believed in our mission of making the world a better place. When I had learned about, I really started diving deep into the ties between our food choices and, you know, how much they impact the water, the air, the animals, our own selves, the community, how complicated our food system has gotten. I really wanted to make an impact and make things better. And once that all kind of clicked together, it was just dogged determination of just like, this needs to happen. And then it just, you know, grew, people responded. And so I just kind of had to try to keep up and learn as I go. And again, not overly thinking, you know, thinking enough, but not overthinking every big decision. And a little bit of just going with my gut.
Nice. What about getting into retailers? Because this can be quite a challenge, you know, for companies trying to get into some of the retailers. So you got into Whole Foods Market, Costco. Can you tell us a little bit about how you did that and any tips that you can offer on? Yeah.
Again, it was not knowing the rules. So like I showed up at my local Whole Foods with a bag of soup. I literally showed up with a bag of soup. You should not do that right now. And at the time I happened to walk in next, I was at the customer service desk saying, you know, I want to talk to the buyer of the store. And I happened to find myself standing next to the regional chef who cooked all of the soup for the entire Whole Foods region. And he got mad at me, but I ended up clicking with him. I ended up just making these connections because they were like, who is this girl that is showing up with a bag of soup? But, you know, the buyer really took to me, like we clicked. And that one store took a chance on us, and then we just added another store and another store, and then I just cold called. I mean, I'm the CEO.
You did.
I am, you know, Costco. I called and I left a voicemail and an email, and I do that. You know, I'm kind of like a nag. I'm like a gnat. You know, I'm like, you gotta pay attention to me. It's definitely gotten harder. There's a lot more competition. There's, you know, especially in the pandemic world, buyers are very hard to get in touch with. They're very hard to get, you know, them to pay attention. It's very challenging, but just, you know, you got to believe in your brand and just keep, you know, try to find something about your brand or your pitch that is a little bit different. That's going to get someone to read that email out of the 700 that come in. It's like, well, what did you just say to me? And so that's kind of, you know, what we still do.
Yeah, great. Thank you for sharing that. I know you're right. And that's what I've heard before, is that often once you get into that first store, you know, if you're not in any, once you get that first one, you've got your first kind of, you know, step rung on the ladder, then it can be kind of easier. You can at least say, well, this store has already taken the chance. So, but you're right, that, dogged determination. So you touched on one of I was going to ask you about your current challenges. So I guess that's one of them, is getting in front of buyers because there's so much more competition. How has the COVID-19 situation, how has that impacted your business?
Yeah, it's been very hard. So it's hard to get in front of buyers. And then if you know, we're able to get onto the shelves of a supermarket or in the refrigerator, we can't market ourselves in the same way. So we used to send teams out to hand out samples of the product and to talk to people. And that's really the best way, you know, to grow your brand. If people can try it and touch it and see it, they're more likely to buy it. And so when you go into a new store and you can't do that, it's very hard to get a consumer to pay attention, because everyone has habits. They know what brand of, juice they like and wine they like, and it's hard to get people to change. And then, I don't know when that's going to come back, because even if the vaccines, people kind of now understand how gross we were before, like, I don't think anyone's ever going to go back to a restaurant and not like wash their hands. I used to, because I'm in the food business. I remember when I'd go out to dinner with friends, I would, always excuse myself and go wash my hands before I would eat. And a lot of people didn't do that. And it's not like they were gross. It's just, it wasn't part of our habits. And now it's just part. So I don't know if people are going to feel comfortable just taking samples from people handing them out at stores. Maybe we might, this might be a far off memory and we're just going to go right back to the way we were. I don't know. And then it's also really hard when people do their shopping online, if they use brands, shoppers that go for them, like Instacart or whatever. A lot of people just are like, repeat my previous cart, they just press the button. And so if you're a new brand, it's really hard to get in front of someone who's not even in the store. It's very challenging. So then you have to reach consumers directly, and you have to get them to go to your website and learn about your brand and then go through the checkout process. So it's very, very challenging.
How have you been handling that?
Well, we really expanded our local, our delivery program. So we really, we shut down. We used to have 2 stores. One is permanently closed and one turned into this hub for local deliveries. And we go all over. We're delivering to hundreds and hundreds of people in the DC area, Virginia and Maryland, every day almost. And then we put, some effort into advertising online to expand our nationwide shipping program. So we don't ship to Australia yet, but we do ship to the 48 continuous states. And it's expensive, but it's a great way to introduce new people to our brand. And then we're trying to get creative, trying to do Zoom classes and partner up with other brands to just get people to pay attention to us and to maybe, spend more than 10 seconds on our site to learn about what we're trying to do as a business and get people to understand, like, no, purchasing from us is good. That's like a step in the right direction.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think you said on your website you don't include any ingredients that you can't pronounce. So right. You've got it's quite a good time for people who are wanting to be healthy, but also want to taste delicious food. That's brilliant. Now, you're a mother and daughter team. That's an interesting dynamic, working with family members. That can be kind of really great, or obviously I'm sure we've all heard of some dodgy falling out partnerships or falling outs. Any tips on how have you navigated that relationship, and any tips for people who want to work with family members?
Just remember, mom's the boss, right? I mean, she I just like for someone to ask of their mother what I asked of mine, like, you shouldn't do that. I mean, she was in retirement, she was happy, and we've just had the most amazing time. But just respect of your mother. And I'm very fortunate in that she's my best friend. Like, we have a very, very close relationship, and we're able to laugh off, if we like start it's just, we laugh it off because we just have such a good time. And I'm just so grateful for the opportunity to spend, this past year I haven't been able to, but to, before that, spend so much wonderful time building something with my mom. It's like such a gift.
Wow. Nice. So there are any tips? And so what happens if you have like a disagreement of some kind? Well, I guess you kind of answered that question. You said mom's the boss, but
I think you have to understand who's in charge of what. So like she's in charge of recipe development and quality control. And if she thinks something doesn't taste good, or she thinks we're not cooking it correctly, she makes the final call on that. But if it's a branding decision, a business decision, I'm the one who's really in charge of that. That's my call to make. And so really understanding, who plays what role in the business is very helpful.
Yeah. No, that's really smart. Very smart. Now, you use the word plant-based, and I know we've had this discussion. I ask a lot of people this. I've got a whole chapter in my book, Vegan Ventures, about it, and I've written about it. And there's no wrong or right answer. But I just love to get an idea of why people use, say, plant-based over vegan or vice versa. So you've chosen to use plant-based rather than go full-on with vegan. Tell us a bit about that decision.
Well, it's funny. On the container, it says both. If you buy our product at a supermarket, it says on it, on the front, vegan. And on the description, it says plant-based. The truth is, I don't understand. I mean, plant-based kind of popped up like a few years ago. And I was like, oh, is this what we're saying now? Okay. I didn't know there was a controversy. I like the idea of plant-based because whether we like it or not, there's a stigma sometimes attached to the word vegan. And I feel that plant-based is more hip. And people think like, oh, it's like almost like plant-based is the new kale, which is it's very hip to be plant-based. And so for me, I don't care. Like if people want to call us or if they identify plant-based or vegan, just as long as you're eating a primarily plant-focused diet, like everybody wins. Everybody wins. And so I just whatever's palatable to people, I don't identify our company as either one. I mean, we're vegan. Like, I'm staunchly vegan, but that's a personal decision for me. And if someone wants to eat my soup and say, oh, I'm plant-based on Mondays. Okay, great. As this fits in, wonderful. We're all better off for it.
Yeah, wonderful. Love it. Great. Now, let's talk about Shark Tank. So you were on Shark Tank in 2018 and you got some quite harsh comments from the judges. They didn't hold back. And, a couple of them even seemed to write you off. And I think one of them said, oh, don't encourage it. It was pretty full on. What were they right about, if you believe they were right? And what did you learn from the experience?
Huh, no one's ever asked me that before. What were they right about? I mean, I definitely needed to be, I think they were right about, look, financially, it's very hard to run a CPG business. It's very hard to run a food business. And so they're right. Like you need to have, a solid amount of money in the bank to support, the ups and downs. So that's true across the board. And also I needed to be flexible with our production. They were very staunchly, if I had said we're going to co-pack, I think we could have gotten a deal. And co-packing means, you contract out the cooking. So you find another facility to cook your product. And the reason I had, and I continued, I struggle with that question quite a bit to this day, as our kitchen is kind of experiencing some growing pains, to put it mildly. What's the next best step? But the problem is, when you co-pack, you lose control, not only, and you could say I'm a control freak. A lot of entrepreneurs are, but I think I'd like to say I'm a values freak. And so I don't know how someone else I'm not going to be able to say that if someone else cooks my soup, that they're treating their staff fairly, that they're sourcing properly. We are really, really focused on our values about, like you mentioned, we're certified plastic neutral. We care for our staff. I mean, we pay very well. We provide fully subsidized insurance to every full-time employee. I have the same insurance policy as the person who chops our carrots and the person who delivers the soup. We all have the same insurance, and it's all fully paid for. We have our insane strict COVID-19 security protocol. I hired a doctor to come in and take care of us and test us. So I don't know what other people are doing. And I remember when I did visit some co-packers, I remember walking the floor with the owner of one of these co-packing facilities. And I remember noticing that not only did he not say hello to everybody, but they kind of were afraid of him. They all looked away. And I was like, I'm not having someone like that cook my soup. That's terrible. That's terrible. And I remember learning from one of kind of a quasi mentor of mine. He's a distributor, but every morning he would go onto his floor and greet every single staff person by name. Hi, how you doing? How's your mom? How's your blah, 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 every single morning. And it was inspiring. And by the way, that guy has had the same team working for him for 25 years. Yeah. So it's a bigger, what we're trying to build here is more than just a business. We're trying to really make the world better. And you can't outsource that. I just don't think you can.
I love that. I love that. So what did you get after? Because sometimes, like, I think being on Shark Tank itself, regardless of whether you get a deal or not get a deal, there can be some benefits and advantages afterwards. So tell us what happened after the show and what were some of the benefits of being on it?
Even though you got roasted. I got to talk to millions of people about our business. I had a nationwide platform. You cannot buy that type of marketing. I mean, they say that it's worth like $9 million, equivalent to be, being on Shark Tank is, and every time it replays, more and more people buy the soup. And it's opened so many doors for us. A lot of times I'll be able to get in the door at a retailer because they know me from Shark Tank. It's just, you just have to know when you're on Shark Tank, a lot of people go in and a lot of people go under afterwards because they think that all of their problems are going to be solved and everything's going to, and the truth is the Shark Tank bump lasts one day. And then, then it's back to business with a bigger audience and a bigger baseline. But like, you need to be able to sustain that bump and build on it. And I think that, that's the real benefit of Shark Tank, of like, you start here, you end here. And then, so you're no longer building off of this baseline, you're building off of this baseline, but can you sustain that?
Yeah. And I think one of the ways you did that and that people do is with additional media coverage.
Yeah, exactly.
And I know you got on the Today Show, you had to kind of tell us a little bit about what are some of the benefits of media coverage that you
my gosh, it's amazing. I mean, when you pay for an ad on social media, people know that. Your people, it's not necessarily authentic. It's a curated, the images and the messaging is all curated. When you have the opportunity to be on a podcast or a television show, it's live, it's raw, it's authentic. And, it's free because it's press coverage. It's people who genuinely want to tune into your story. And so when you get the chance to talk about your brand to a audience that's tuned in and listening, I mean, look, when we were on the Today Show, they replayed our segment in April of 2020 and our site crashed. It was a bigger reaction because everyone was home during COVID.
Of course,
it was the beginning of the shutdown. And we were like, oh, okay, it's going to re-air. And we were like, oh my gosh, it was great. We just didn't connect. Like, everybody's home. And it was a segment about us and our values. And it was a cold spring. So people at home, people already sick of cooking. They wanted to eat healthfully. And literally, like, all of the people watching went to our website and it crashed.
Wow, amazing. No, that's brilliant. I always say that as well. It gives you that third party authority as well. Like, as you say, with an ad, everyone knows the brand is behind it. Whereas when you get that third party authority and credibility, that can really work. So regardless, and this is another thing which I think is great. But often people, like you said, that you think, oh, going on Shark Tank, and then if you get a deal, great, everything's sorted. If you don't get a deal, oh, that's it. You've lost the biggest opportunity of your life. And obviously it can feel that way maybe in the moment, but that's not the end. And obviously for Soupergirl, you recently received $2 million in funding and investment to grow your national sales. And as we mentioned, one of the investors is Beyond Meat's Seth Goldman. Can you talk us through how you got that investment? Like, did they approach you? Did you approach them? How did that all come about?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Gosh. We knew we needed to raise money. We wanted to grow. We had proven the concept, I think, here. We had proven that, there's a market for this and for a brand like ours. And it was like a dance for like a year. It was like, I consider it almost like dating. It's like, are they going to call? Should we call? Are we calling too soon? Did they call? Did they get the message? Should we email them again? I don't know. But there was just a synergy of this, with Seth and more with Arborview Investments. He came on at the end. He's always been a mentor of mine. He's unbelievable. He's such a supportive person. But Arborview, the group that led the series, they're impact investors. They look for companies that are really trying to make the world a better place. So it was a very nice fit. They're amazing, absolutely amazing. But it just, thinking there's a match is it really is like dating. It's like, it's love enough. you think, you have your values are aligned and you want to accomplish the same thing, but then you got to go through all of the financials from the beginning of the business, and you got to go through your processes, and you got to go through and it takes a very, very long time to close a deal like that, a very long time. And it's extraordinarily time consuming, and it's hard because, as a CEO, I just want to work. I just want to build my brand. I just want to build my sales. I just want to, work on the company, and that is working on the company, but in a different way. And it's a very slow, difficult process, but obviously well worth it, because hopefully we're going to keep growing, which is challenging right now, as I mentioned in the beginning.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that. I think because some people think, oh, that's great, $2 million. But like you say, it's not just something that's going to be immediate, because they want to comb through, do all the due diligence and so on. And to make sure from both of your sides that you're going to be, the right fit. So you said you're going to use it to grow your national sales. Can you expand on that a little bit? Like what specifically you're going to use the investment for, and why you've decided to use that? Because that's another thing that I think that comes up often when companies get investment. They're kind of like, oh, I'm going to spend it on this. And that might not necessarily be the best thing. So how did you come to the decision of how to use it, and how specifically are you going to use it?
Well, we're still figuring it out, because we've already, we tried a little bit and we're like, oh, that didn't work. Initially it was like, oh, marketing, building the brand. But I think we stumbled a little bit there, because as I think I mentioned in the beginning, we really experienced the most success when we were really authentic with our brand voice, and we threw out the rule book and just communicated the way we wanted to. And I think we're kind of going back to that now, except now we have a digital strategy coordinator, so we're able to hire someone instead of me kind of trying to figure it out. We have someone on our team who knows social, who understands audiences and advertising and algorithms, and that's great. So it's like we can build this authentic voice, but then have someone help post, guide, analyze the data. We can really make data-driven decisions. And then, we needed to hire a CFO. We needed to hire a sales team. And when I say grow nationally, you need to do so responsibly. You need to do so with a plan. And we had a really skeletal team. So we haven't been on any sort of hiring binge, but we've certainly filled some gaps that have enabled us to shore up our processes, and then plan and strategize about how we're going to grow nationally. And what does national mean? It means expanding our direct-to-consumer program. So really letting people outside the DC area, outside, maybe Pennsylvania, New York, know, like, hey, you can get the world's best soup delivered right to your door. Well, that takes some money to get that message out to people in Chicago and Detroit and St. Louis, and then also be able to have, like, if we are so lucky to land a few more retailer accounts, which we hope to in the next year, well, if you're going to land an example, Acme Food Company, I'm just making this up. So they're going to place an initial order for 500 stores. Well, you need to be able to purchase your labels. You need to be able to purchase your containers and the produce before they pay you, and so you need some money in the bank to be able to support that growth. And then you need to be able to hire some salespeople who can then go to the Acme, stores and make sure that it's put on the shelves correctly, that it's priced correctly, that it's selling. It takes money to support growth. And so when we talk about how we're going to spend it, that it's really smart, data-based preparation and strategy.
Yeah, nice. Interesting. You said you've hired a CFO. Why was that an important decision, Chief Financial Officer?
Oh, because I'm terrible. I mean, I was handling the books. I was sitting right in front of it. Here is the Idiot's Guide to Small Business Owners. I read this in 2007. I didn't go to business school, I had to teach myself, economic, accounting. I had to learn it, and it worked. But then as the business grew, things got out of control. Though, we didn't have proper processes in place, and I'd outsourced a lot of our accounting, and I wasn't really able to, manage these consultants who were doing it for us, and it created a bit of a mess. And so when you're at this size, you need to have processes in place. You need to have a proper accounting procedures. You need to have, you need to really have things tied up. And so I needed to bring on someone who could handle that.
Yeah, perfect. Wonderful. It makes a lot of sense. Let's talk a little bit about sustainability. So packaging is obviously a big problem in the food industry, even for vegan, other ethical brands who really want to do better, but are just kind of, sometimes the regulations and what's available, can't really get around that. But you have become plastic neutral through your partnership with Repurpose Global, I think they're called. Tell us a little bit about that. How are you plastic neutral? What have you done?
Yeah, it's simple. They're amazing. We basically ran a calculation of how much plastic that we put into the atmosphere, which is too much. And then they partner with area organizations. We're working with one in India, and they pay folks to literally pull plastic out of landfills and out of the ocean, and properly process it, either recycle it or reuse it. And so we fund that. We pay per pound. We ran a number of calculations and pay per pound, so we can technically say we're not contributing anything additional, any additional plastic, because that plastic is getting pulled out. That being said, I hate plastic. I think it is literally the devil. I mean, it's been revolutionary. It changed people's lives. It enabled, it before we realized how horrible it was. I mean, say it lowered food waste, allowed for a lot of enhancements in food safety, and then I think people realize, like, wait a second, this keeps food safe, and this it keeps oxygen out, and but like it never goes away. I think with that ship has sailed. Like, we're so dependent on plastic, and it's a disaster. And so I'm hoping, we are in conversations. They're far too preliminary to announce anything, but there is some new technology out there on the market that I think might really put a dent into our reliance on plastic. I'm just wondering why Silicon Valley hasn't caught up yet. And I think it's because plastic is so cheap.
Yeah.
So, at the end of the day, people want to make money, and plastic is cheap. And so there's not this groundswell of demand. It all comes down, unfortunately, to business. I mean, look at like Beyond Meat. Burger King, for example, is not a benevolent company. They saw an opportunity to make money, so they added Beyond Meat. It's or Impossible Burger, excuse me. It's a business decision for a lot of people. But if consumers, demand change, well, that's what led Burger King to say we need to look at this. So, it's complicated, but unfortunately, plastic right now is the only container available that's food safe, that can really handle our type of product. And I know a lot of companies really struggle with that.
But I like that you found an innovative way to offset that, though. So, and I think that's really helpful for people to know, because obviously sometimes, rather than just going, oh, well, there's nothing I can do, we've got to carry on using it. It's like, okay, we've got to use it, but how else can we offset it? So I think that's really great.
I hope so. I just don't want people to think that we've checked that off and we're cool with plastic. We're not. I consider this a bridge until we find a different container solution. I just don't want people to think plastic's cool now because we're certified neutral. Nope. I hope this is just a temporary fix until we can really remove plastic from our system.
Yeah, got it. So just to wrap up, a couple of last questions. You've obviously sustainability is really important to you. You've mentioned that you're very much a values-driven, mission-driven business. I know you're involved in other social causes. Obviously, the company's vegan. So, you're obviously aiming to be good for people, animals, and planet. And I know a lot of businesses kind of do that. Sometimes it's, I think I heard a term recently, purpose washing. And obviously for genuine mission-driven businesses like yourself, it's really important. But I would, rather than it just being something nice that you do just to kind of save the world, I would love if you could also explain, because I'm hoping some of the bigger companies will hear, that are maybe not so ethical, that will hear this. How is being involved in all these social causes, how is being business for good actually benefiting your business?
It's a good question. And it's pretty easy to answer, I think, actually, because I've been struggling with this. If consumers are making the choice between, so there's never one option of food. You go to the supermarket. I mean, even now as a vegan, I'm overwhelmed by the ice cream choices. There used to be one. It was tofutti, and it was, now it's like Ben and Jerry's has gotten into the game. I can't even decide. So when you're presented with all of these choices, the great thing is consumers are getting on board with understanding how important their choices are. And when they're presented with two somewhat similar products or some category of products, consumers are more and more likely to choose the company that stands for something more than just giving you the cheapest food or the cheapest product. Consumers are looking at the back, and they're not only looking at the ingredients, they're looking at the values, looking at the statements, and they sometimes are, clicking on that QR code, and they're going to the website and they're seeing, what does this company stand for? Okay, this company might cost 50 cents more, but that 50 cents stands for a heck of a lot more than this just like on sale commodity. And I think that especially with COVID having exposed so much inequality and so many issues in our food supply and our just our industrialized food system, consumers are really waking up to these issues, and they're choosing values-focused brands. And so if you decide to stand for something and take that extra step to do good, consumers are starting to respond in a bigger and bigger way.
Absolutely. And I think it's good to show that as well, like to demonstrate that. So make it very clear in your branding and your marketing that you do these extra things. Because you're right, like sometimes people go, oh, if they're standing in the store, they don't always kind of know, oh, okay, this product is 50 cents or $1 extra. They just think, oh, why is that more expensive? But when they find out that, wow, that goes a long way to, paying staff, fair wages, not exploiting people, in other countries, not harming animals, being as sustainable as possible. It's like, it's a no-brainer if you can afford to then, obviously there's, a growing number of consumers that are willing to do that. And like I say, I really hope that some of these big players, particularly a lot of those that are jumping in on the plant-based trend and the vegan trend, which is great, it's fantastic. And I guess my logic is, some people say, I'm being overly optimistic. My optimism or my view is that if they can see that being ethical equals more profits, why not be more ethical? So yeah. I'm hoping that will come, but that's great. Well, I think you're a wonderful example of that. So I know it's very tricky now to kind of plan with obviously, everything that's going on, but anything you can share with us, or at least, for the future, what your vision is, what your aims or your plans are for yourself and for Soupergirl.
Yeah, I mean, look, we'd like to be the premier soup company in the United States. We want to be, when people go into the supermarket, no matter where you live, you're going to see you're going to see Soupergirl in the refrigerator, and it's going to be a no-brainer to buy it because you know what we stand for, you know who we are, and you know what we believe in. And that's really the vision. And so it's just a slog to get there, to figure out how to get in front of the buyers, in front of the consumers, to get everyone's attention and to make sure that people know, like, hey, we're here, we're growing, and we want to be a part of your lives. So, we're just trying to grow state by state, mouth by mouth, spoon by spoon, and just keep expanding.
Brilliant. I love that. Look, you've shared some wonderful insights, Sarah. It's been lovely having you on the show. I think it's been great to have someone like yourself who's been in business for a long time and just seeing those kind of the ebbs and flows, and it isn't one just straight line of, okay, we start here and then it just go. It is up and down, I think, for all businesses, but you keep going. You've got that, like you said, that doggedness to continue, and you've got a very clever brand, and you're working on how to stand out. And look, you've already got a customer waiting in Australia for when you do go global. So I'm looking forward to those. They sound really tasty because I'm someone, I don't really like the kitchen. I will make a fresh fruit smoothie and I'll make a salad for our lunches, but then anything else like the dinner, I order from a plant-based meal, a vegan meal delivery service. You make it, it arrives, I heat it up, I eat it. That's brilliant. So your soups sound ideal for that. So absolutely. Everybody, do check out Soupergirl's website. It's thesoupergirl.com. And Sara, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Katrina. It was a real pleasure. You asked really, really interesting, creative questions. So thank you so much for your thoughtfulness and being such a wonderful hostess.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. And thanks everyone for joining us. Bye for now.